Frederik, what is on the top of your mind in terms of blockchain agenda right now?
Well, there's basically three things on top of my mind. The first one is identity. What type of identities are we using in the normal world, and how do we bridge that to the blockchain world? The second thing is the Clarity Act in combination with the Genous Act, and how that's going to change the landscape for blockchain adoption, both for financial services but also for non-financial services. And the third thing is the change of risk mitigation in finance at large. So basically how the auditor's role are changing based on new technologies and based on how we harvest the power of the blockchain for general financial data.
Let's unpack all of them. So if we talk about identity, what do you mean by that?
So in the blockchain space for the last maybe 8-9 years, we've all been sort of looking towards something called self-sovereign identity. So how do we as humans take control over our own identities in plural, right? How do we manage that, and how do we get to a situation that we have more control? At the same time, the regulator has been coming out with very strong privacy rules. Specifically, the EU GDPR is sort of leading in terms of strictness, right, and in terms of punishment that can happen. But it also has meant that we really didn't get any adoption on it, and that meant that nearly all blockchains has been sort of small islands. So you might have two blockchains who can speak to each other, right? But you did not have a reinsurance company who could actually interact with the blockchain, or you did not have a blockchain who could interact with the tier 1 investment bank, or that you could interact with a hospital, because you always had this difficulty with the man in the middle. So the established identity standards, which is in the market today, were not interoperable with the blockchain, and the blockchain suggestions were not interoperable there. And specifically, we chose to work with something called the legal entity identifier, which is governed by G20, and it actually protects 400 trillion of assets. So 78% of all TradFi around the whole world use this standard today. And the ability to bring that into the blockchain and out of the blockchain by having a wallet, we call it Viridian, which is an architecture where you can manage from simple machine identities all the way up to these VLEIs. That's really game-changing, because it allows you to do price oracles and verify data streams in a way that was always promised but was never delivered. And that goes, it's a whole new onboarding of a new type of businesses on blockchain. So it's what, instead of staying in pilot and never going live, you're now able to go live with these things. So I think this is really cool and magnificent, and you see a big trend going towards the LEI and the VLEI happening right now in the market. So it's not just something Cardano is pushing, but we're just the only blockchain right now who can actually do it.
Very interesting. And if we talk about Clarity Act, that's another thing you shared on top of your mind.
Yeah. So the MiCA deadlines are coming up very soon, depending on the member state, right? You have the grandfathering rule is being applied, right? And MiCA 2 is already starting to come into circulation, right? And there was this hope in the European Union that Europe could become a powerhouse around stable coins and digital assets, right? And we could create, a demand for euro-denominated coins and protect GDP or even grow GDP. What actually happened was the opposite, right? That the implementation scared a lot of people away, and the cost of doing it and the market size was actually not big enough. So it had the opposite effect. Now the Genous Act was ratified and came around, right? Plus now the Clarity Act, which we are hoping that over the summer can get over the board, which basically will open the US market completely widely open for digital assets, tokenization, RWAs, etc. But it's more interesting maybe is not the TradFi piece, but because on the Clarity Act you have very clear differentiation between what is a commodity and what is in the banking side, right? And on the commodity side, the risk willingness for adopting new technology in the US is just, 50x, 100x more than what we have in Europe and Switzerland. So here we are still, we're quite satisfied with life, right? In the US is always more, better, faster, And with that clarity coming, you're going to see non-traditional finance applications from, everything from tractors and harvesting to mining, etc. is going to explode. So we're going to see massive blockchain adoption being driven by the US based on that. And I think that's going to, shape a lot and bring a lot of innovation. So it's really, really interesting what's happening now.
And the third point, you talked about the auditors.
Yeah, so for 5 years now, we've been working hard on can we change the way we trust normal finance data. So we're not talking about financial markets now. We're just talking about any company out there who pay a salary, they have some income, they have some cost, and they build a balance sheet and a P&L statement. And today, how the system works is that if you go over a certain threshold, you have an audit requirement. That means an auditor will come in and will check if there's any fraud, if everything is accurate, if processes are in place, and so forth. And then they sign with a signature, right? And they say, oh, you can now be trusted. And this is a yearly cyclus what's happening on these spot checks. And what we've done now is we actually got so far that we posted all the Cardano Foundation's financial transactions on the blockchain. Is about 70,000 transactions. And to my big surprise, the auditor basically harvested all of that data from the blockchain, compared all of the data with the data in the ERP system, find it to be complete, right? And then they signed off on the blockchain using the LEI we spoke about earlier, right? To say, I am Grant Thornton Zurich. I hereby verify, and the test is called, right? That the data you provided is the data which was underlying to building the P&L statement and the balance sheet, and here is the P&L statement and the balance sheet, and they signed that as well. This is truly unique because we're now going into an automated way of not just doing the spot checks, but doing the architecture.
Frederik, what is on your top of agenda in Cardano right now?
It's mainly adoption. So I really, we're really focusing very hard right now on transactions on the chain, diversified transactions, where we can prove to the world that it's better, faster, cheaper. It changes something. It makes business more sustainable. It makes social systems better. And it's verifiable on the blockchain. So a variety of different use cases and creating a true economy on top of the blockchains instead of an artificial economy, as you sometimes can be, a victim of.
Super. Thank you so much. Thank you for this interview.